Hey guys, welcome back to the Beginner's Basics for Space Engineers. Now, if you're following along in order that I'm producing these, you'll be expecting me to talk about how to make a grid work and possibly about completing the buildings and then the construction of the various parts of that grid. However, I'm gonna pull a little sneaky on you and talk instead about the basic controls for the game. Now, I realize it might be a little bit too basic for the beginner's basics, but you control your character with W, A, S, and D. Also, when you're flying, which I press X to activate my jetpack, you can go up by holding the space button. You can go down by pushing the C button. And at least on a planet here, gravity pulls you down, and you can jump a little bit using the same space button that you would use to fly upright. Now, while flying, you can hold E to rotate clockwise. You can hold Q to rotate counterclockwise. And I think that's basically it. You get used to flying around and zipping back and forth, having yourself move in and out. It becomes a little bit second nature to have those fingers move the way they want to move. Now, let's drop down here. You'll see I took some damage. In the bottom left of the screen, there's a little plus sign. That's my health, like a plus, the kind of symbol you see on like a first aid kit. 85 out of 100. My O2, my oxygen, is at 100. Now that does not matter if I am going to have my helmet open or closed. I'm on a planet with high oxygen and warm temperatures. And you can see that information just underneath the hotbar where numbers 8, 9, and 10 are. One of the things that you... well, hold on. Let's go back to oxygen. Oxygen's at 100%, but if I were up in space, then it would be slowly dropping as I walk around and do things. I'll need to recharge that. Beneath oxygen is the power. That's the little lightning bolt symbol, and you can see that I'm at 88. And as I use my welder here, it drops down from 87, 86, etc. Beneath that, H2, hydrogen, is at 30. And that's the fuel I use to fly around. And if I go into below 20%, I get down in the red, and we'll see that if I am not careful, I'll get a warning saying my fuel is low, and I'll drop out of the sky and take more damage. Your survival kit here, at the back of your respawn pod, can repair all of those things. It'll heal me up slowly, it'll bring my oxygen, my power, and my hydrogen back up to full. The reason that it can increase and restore my hydrogen and my oxygen, however, is because... let's go... oh. The reason it can restore my oxygen and my hydrogen is because it is connected via that little conveyor tube there to this, which is an O2H2 generator. Now, if I press I while looking at it, I'll open up the inventory. And you'll see that inside of this is a few bottles and some ice. The base game does not have the ability to introduce water, so it uses ice as a solid medium for H2O. And the O2H2 generator is basically an electrolysis machine. It splits the oxygen and hydrogen out of the ice. That does touch on the idea that you have these bottles here. If you have bottles in your inventory, you'll see that on the bottom left of the screen I now have those extra bottles. Using up my hydrogen to fly around does now give me a way I can refuel my hydrogen out of one of those bottles. You should see here in a second that my hydrogen is going to be refilled by the bottle in my inventory. Ideally, it happens before you fall out of the sky. There we go. The next of the basic controls I wanted to touch on is how to use your mouse and interact with your environment. Different parts of a grid, different blocks have different access points that do different things. Almost always, you're going to be interacting with them using the F key. F is just the default I want to interact with this interface. So if I press F on a chair, I sit in the chair. However, if I press F on the terminal for a survival kit, I'll restore my bars. F on an inventory access point brings up the inventory. However, you can use different keys to access different parts. So even though I'm looking at the inventory here, if I press K, it brings up the control panel. Or if I'm at a chair, if I press I, it pulls up the chair's inventory, which shows me that I have a gun, some ammo, and a data pad hidden inside the chair. More of the basic controls that are going to be extremely helpful for you to understand right off the get-go are what you can do with your mouse. Now, looking at this basic assembler, if I hold down the left click, the one that turns on my welder, I will start welding up the block. And you see that I went from 1 to 2 steel plates, and it went from 0 to 2% welded. In order for me to easily use the game interface to know what I need on that list of components on the bottom right of the screen, I can press the right-click button, and that added the components to my build planner. It gave me a little error noise because I had already started trying to weld it up. If I were to go over here to the basic refinery that I hadn't touched yet, and press the same right-click, it would simply add the components to my build planner. Your build planner you can look at pressing the G button. The G button pulls up your list of blocks that you know how to make. And down here, your build planner. So the build planner is like your temporary memory to use to bring plans back and forth between grids. You can add things to the build planner while within the G menu by pressing the middle mouse button, the button that is also your scroll wheel. And over on the build planner, you can remove things by pressing the right button. Now I'm going to leave the basic assembler in my build planner and do the next bit. By going to a inventory access panel on a grid that has a production ability, so this survival kit can produce components, look at the inventory access and press the middle mouse button. And it'll say, cannot withdraw the components that you want. Now, if inside of the inventory of this grid I had already had all of those components that were on my build planner, I'd have automatically pulled exactly those out. But I don't have them, obviously. So now what I want to do is tell the grid to produce those. And you can do that in a couple of ways. You can go into the inventory, and there are buttons here in the center that allow you to use those mouse buttons that I'm describing now. And if you hover over it, you'll see it says withdraw components. Middle mouse button is the default withdraw, shortcuts for conveyor port interaction. This tooltip that you get tells you what you need to know about how to use the mouse. And you'll see that there are options for holding down the Alt button and the Control button while you are doing these things. Now, let's say I had some more ore here, some more of this stone. Okay, so I've gathered a bunch of more stone ore. I'm going to finish crouching, walk back up here, and looking at this inventory here, I press F, and I can see that if I am to press Alt and press the middle mouse button, that'll deposit everything into the inventory. And I don't have to access the inventory every time. So holding Alt, pressing the middle mouse button, I now have all of the components deposited. But we were talking about the build planner earlier. So what I'm going to do is look at this inventory here, press the Shift button and press the middle mouse button, and it's going to tell all of the components that are on my build planner here to be added to the production queue of the inventory here. So this survival kit is now trying to produce all of those components that I need to make up the larger assembler. Another functionality of the G menu, which you access by pressing G, is that it dictates what you have on your hotbar down here. So let's say that I want to make sure that the gun that I found in that seat is available to be used. I'm going to use my right mouse button to remove the, what was it called? The light armor block from slot number 4 there. And I'm going to go down to character weapons. The gun that I have available, the S10, I'm going to either click and drag it or double click it, and it appears in slot 4. Now, I now have the gun available, and I can shoot things as I see fit. But, you know what, I want to be able to build a tower onto the grid here, so I'm going to go ahead and get the light armor block back down here. I'm going to replace the basic assembler, because I don't need to build one of those anymore. And as you can see, I have a small block. Now there are a couple of things you can do here. You can press the number to pull it up again by pressing 5, and that turns it into a large block version, or press it again, it goes back to being small. Or if you try to attach it to the wrong sized grid, it'll automatically change to the correct size. So I'm going to go ahead and fly up here, attach a bit of a tower up a little ways. Alright folks, I think that about does it for this episode of Beginner's Basics, talking about the controls for how to move your character and get him to do what you want them to do, and the interface between the player and the grids. So, I do hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe so you can come back for the next episode of the Beginner's Basics for Space Engineers. And until the next time, thanks for watching.